is up, everyone? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we'll be reacting to what was the first F1 car. This was requested quite a few times actually, so we're going to get into it. I feel like I'm going to enjoy this because I feel like I haven't done an F1 video in a while, so I'm just going to shut up and we'll get straight into it.
Race cars have made their way into the history books because they pioneered a certain technology and were the first of their kind. This also applies
It is
to
incredible
Formula 1
like how
cars.
far they've
49B
come in
was the first
technology for
car
F1.
with
It's
wings,
insane.
and the Tyrrell P34 was the first F1 car with 6 wheels.
Wow.
While there are several extensive lists covering
6
all
wheels.
the F1 pioneers, nobody has seemingly found the urge to ask one simple question. What was the first F1 car? You'd think solving that question would be pretty straightforward. You just look up the first F1 World Championship race, this being the 1950 British Grand Prix at Silverstone, look at all the cars on the grid and find out which one was built first. But here's the thing, most of these cars were already over 10 years old. You could even go as far as saying most of the cars in the first F1 race weren't actually F1 cars. Let's find out why.
Okay, let's get into it.
To find the first F1 car, we have to take a quick look at the origin of the Formula 1 World Championship. In 1904, the Association Internationale des Automobiles Clubs Reconnus was founded. This international association of recognized automobile clubs would take it upon themselves to host the first European Drivers' Championship in 1931. When the German Auto Union and Mercedes joined this championship with their 600 horsepower plus monsters, the AIACR revised the so-called International Formula Rules in the hopes of stopping the German domination. But the damage had already been done, as several manufacturers that weren't able to produce cars fast enough to compete for wins in the Grand Prix racing scene instead put more
Sounds a bit like F1 today, to be
fair.
fair.
This class of cars can
Everyone's
be seen
trying to
as
stop
Formula 2
somebody's
of the 30s,
domination.
featuring 1.5 litre supercharged engines or 4.5 litre naturally aspirated engines. The class saw some excellent competitive racing from brands like ERA, Maserati, Alfa Romeo and more. And it's this class of cars that would be promoted to the new top class in 1947, which would now be known as Formula 1. The AIACR was now rebranded as the FIA, and seeing as Europe lay in ruin because of the war, they didn't think it was fair to force everyone to start making brand new cars for a new set of regulations.
Especially after the race in Qatar.
When the FIA brought together several one-off races into one series in 1950, the F1 World Championship was born. The Voiturettes would continue racing as Formula 1 cars until the end of the 1951 season. It's a situation endurance racing fans will recognize, as the Corvette C8R and Alpine hypercar are good examples. The Corvette was built for the GTE regulations, but in 2022, when IMSA ditched GTE cars in favor of running only GT3 class cars, the Corvette ran in GT3 instead. Corvette could do this because they were allowed by the automakers to modify
Sorry, just
and
random thought there.
slow down their car as a stopgap to keep racing until their new GT3 car was done. The Alpine hypercar was a similar situation. It too started out as a different type of car, an LMP1 car, but the organizers allowed the team to adapt it so it could fit the new hypercar class. While some fans didn't think this was fair, it did in the end provide a stopgap for the World Endurance Championship, as it and the other two quote-unquote true hypercars kept the class alive for long enough to attract the now high influx of brands. While the Corvette and Alpine are a GT3 and hypercar in name alone, the same can be said for all the cars on the grid at the 1950 British Grand Prix. They're Voiturettes with a different name. So now we come to the first problem. What exactly can be called a Formula 1 car then?
Yeah.
It all depends on how you want to define a Formula 1 car. And as it turns out, there's quite a lot of different methods to do so. First, the most basic one. If it fits the rules, then it's an F1 car. So we'll start with the first year of Formula 1 racing, 1947, and immediately run into another problem.
In Stockholm.
As mentioned before, the Formula 1 World Championship started in 1950, meaning that every race before it was a standalone event or run in a smaller national series. Trying to find the first car in these races is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Even now, people still can't agree on what even was the first F1 race. So to keep things relatively clear, we're gonna stick to the 1950 British GP as a starting point.
Okay.
We then have to look at all the cars on the grid. So the nominees are the Alfa Romeo 158, Maserati 4CL and 4CLT 48 variant, ERA Type E, Type B and Type D, Talbot Lago T26C and T26C DA variant.
You skipped a letter in the alphabet there.
All of these cars had a supercharged 1.5 litre engine, except for the Talbot Lagos, who were the only ones running a naturally aspirated 4.5 litre engine. Then we have to exclude all the cars built before 1947, as that's the year when the Formula 1 name was first used. every car before that year was built under the presumption that it would be a voiturette. Giving
Right.
the honor of being called the first F1 car to a car that was never built with the intention of being an F1 car seems kind of unfair. It's like calling the aforementioned Corvette C8R the first Corvette C8 GT3 car. This means the Italians with Alfa Romeo and Maserati and the English Racing Automobiles or ERA are out, as all of their cars had their origin in the pre-war voiturette era. The French Talbots and British Alta GP don't, so which one raced first? That would be the French Talbot Lago T26C. It made its competitive debut in the 1948 Monaco Grand Prix on the 16th of May. The small
Damn.
British Alta GP made its competitive
That's
debut
crazy
just
that
9
like
days
we've
later
been
in the
racing
so-called
at
British
Monaco
Empire
for that
Trophy.
long and like
Does this mean
Silverstone
the
for
honor
that
of
long.
having made the first F1 car goes to the French? Who is to say? The Alta and Talbot both appeared at the same time at the first F1 World Championship race, so maybe they get to share the honors. Or maybe, as you may have guessed by seeing there are still several minutes left in this video, neither of them qualify as the first F1 car. Like I said before, there are many different types of definitions you could apply to try and find the first F1 car. The method I just used was one of them, and was still based on the voiturette's principle. But you might think that the first F1 car should not be related to this principle at all, as at its core it's still based on a set of regulations from the 30s. The first few years of F1 were again a stopgap, to use what was available to give people time to recover and create an all-new formula somewhere down the line. Perhaps we should fast forward to that formula and see what car was built for it first. But before the FIA and F1 got to that fresh new start they were looking forward to, they stumbled into a bit of a crisis. At
What
the
was
end
the
of the
crisis?
1951 season, Ferrari were the only ones left with the voiturette-style F1 car, the 4.5-litre naturally aspirated V12 Ferrari 375 F1. Alfa Romeo had squeezed all the potential out of their 159, but were outclassed by the Ferrari, and the now aging Talbot Lagos were also not able to keep up anymore. For the 1952 season, it looked like Ferrari would have been the only F1 car on the grid. So to keep the championship alive, the FIA decided to run the season under Formula 2 regulations. That's right, the 1952 and 53 Formula 1 season was raced with Formula 2 cars.
Wow.
Again, a type of car built under a different set of regulations would end up being promoted
I
to
want to know what
F1
the
status
difference was
due
back
to
then for
unforeseen
F1 and F2.
circumstances. An F1 and F2 car were now essentially the same thing. Main technical regulation was a maximum engine size of 2 liters and no forced induction was allowed. While the grids got back up to a healthy number, Ferrari just happened to have an excellent F2 car already. They built their Tipo 500 in 1951, so they continued to use it, and in 1952 dominate yet again. This would happen again in 1953 with the new 553. Then, in 1954, F1 finally got their new set of regulations. Completely severed from voiturettes and Formula 2, cars that were supposed to race now would be true, brand new, purpose-built Formula 1 cars. It was the much needed fresh start for the series. Engine size was now bumped up to 2.5 liters naturally aspirated and was
Right.
supposed to attract a new batch of contenders. So let's repeat the process we used for the first race of the 1950 F1 season, but now use it on the first race of the 1954 season, the Argentine Grand Prix. There were 16 cars on the grid, but only 4 different kinds: the Ferrari 625, Gordini T16, Maserati A6 SSG, and Maserati 250F. And just like before, you have to
It's
cut the meat
crazy
from the
how
chaff.
different they looked
Just because there were new
back
rules
then
doesn't
to
mean
now.
all the
It's
cars
just
were new.
insane.
And just because the engine size was limited to 2.5 liter, nothing prevented you from using a car with a smaller engine. That's why even in this new era, a lot of cars on the grid were slightly, or in case of the Maserati A6 SSG, completely unmodified F2 cars. So that one doesn't count. Then we have the Ferrari and Gordini, 2 cars running the maximum engine size of 2.5 liters. But both of these were still based on their respective Formula 2 variants, now slightly modified and fitted with a bigger engine. Last but certainly not least, we have the Maserati 250F, and the potential conclusion to the search for the first
It's
F1
crazy.
car. Maserati did not upgrade their existing Formula 2 car, and instead built a brand new car. They had been racing in Formula 2 for a while, and all of the knowledge and experience gained in those years was put to good use. The 250F was a relatively simple car based on the design principles of their previous F2 cars, except everything was a bit bigger and better. Juan Manuel Fangio took the 250F to a maiden dominant victory in the first race of the season. All the hard work Maserati had done had paid off. They got themselves a true championship contending car and driver. So, a new chassis and new engine wrapped in a new body. This has got to be the first F1 car then, right? Perhaps.
Right.
But what if you want to go even further?
Oh,
If
okay.
you want to exclude the 250F for being just a bigger, better F2 car, and want to have a car built by a team with zero F2 experience. A team that had nothing to build upon. A car truly built from scratch. And all we need to do is look where Maserati's top driver Fangio defected to. Laying dormant for years, Fangio abandoned the Maserati team in favor of the sleeping giant that had just got back in business, Mercedes.
Oh,
While the
okay.
250F was built on old but solid foundations, the new Mercedes W196
Wow, look at that.
completely revolutionized them. A space frame aluminium chassis
Crazy.
housed a high-tech suspension and mechanically fuel-injected straight-8 engine with legit fighter plane technology. It was the most technologically advanced race car on the planet. For its first race, it was even dressed in a lightweight magnesium alloy aerodynamic body. This Dreamliner model made the 250F look like an ancient relic. In the hands of the experienced Fangio and rookie sensation Stirling Moss, the W196 blitzed the field by winning the 1954 and 55 World Championship with ease. In the 12 races it entered throughout this period, it won 9 times, foiled only a couple
9
of times by
times.
unfortunate mechanical issues, like leaves clogging the low-hanging air intake, and it would have continued dominating if it weren't for the 1955 Le Mans disaster, after which Mercedes pulled out of motorsport altogether.
Oh,
This high-tech
I did a
wonder
video
then
on
is
that.
what the FIA envisioned all along.
It was
A
crazy.
state-of-the-art racing machine built with the newest, most advanced technologies. That's why this Silver Arrow, in my humble opinion, should be called the first true Formula 1 car. But that's just my opinion, and I'm not the end-all be-all
Sounds like a
judge
fair
on this
point.
situation.
Sounds like
By
a
now you
fair
should realize
opinion
that
to me.
deciding which F1 car was the first F1 car is a ridiculously complicated matter with no real definitive answer. So I leave it up to you, the viewer, to decide for yourself what you think should deserve the title of the first F1 car. The
I
Mercedes
mean, I don't know.
W196,
His
the
opinion
Maserati
is quite
250F,
valid.
maybe
So
something from the 1.5 liter era like the Alta GP or Talbot Lago. Or maybe even a car I haven't mentioned like the Ferrari 125 or BRM V16. They were all raced and developed in the early days
maybe
of
I
open
feel
wheel
like I'd
racing.
have to do a lot of
Maybe none
research
or all
to have
should
an
share the
opinion
title.
on it.
Who is to say? I'll end with this. If you think Formula 1 now is often needlessly complicated and doesn't make a lot of sense, then just know it's been like that since the beginning.
Yeah. Well, that was crazy. So there's no real answer then on what the first F1 car was. He asked for my opinion. I'd probably have to do a load of research on it to then find what I think would be the first F1 car. But even then, there's no right or wrong answer. So I don't know. I mean, his opinion about the Mercedes was quite valid, so I'm probably just going to agree with him, to be fair. But yeah, that was a good video. So thank you to the people who requested the video. And with that being said, if you have any other videos that you'd like me to react to, drop them in the comments. I'm working my way through everybody's suggestions at the moment. If you did want to check out any of my other socials or become a Patreon member and get early access to videos like this or top priority over your suggestions, then you can do all of that down below. But I hope you enjoyed today's reaction, and I will catch you next time for the next one. Bye!